What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk Talk Punch, the place where we talk about all those nerdy things that you love to talk about. Thanks so much for joining us. While you're here, make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever a new episode, just like that, whenever a new episode comes out every Wednesday at noon to see what we're talking about, kind of like this week's topic. We're having a conversation about comedies. So I'm Brody Hanson,
Hey,
joined here, as always, by Charlie Hickman. Charlie Hickman, how are you doing?
Brody, I am doing well. Can I just say that? We went out with the fam, did some hiking on a trail,
Nice.
and my boys have been having this like week long Mario based argument. It's great.
Okay.
It's beautiful. I even started recording some of it just because it's reminds me so much of my old conversations with Tudong about like Batman versus Superman and things like that. You know, just like unsolvable problems.
Sure.
So, but this latest one is: would Mario from Mario Maker be able to defeat the Mario from Mario Odyssey in a fight? And
The Mario
just the
from
stuff
Mario
that,
Maker?
yeah, versus the Mario from Mario Odyssey in a battle, who would win? And so this is maybe one of my favorite of their philosophical arguments, and just to hear like the way that they spiral into these different scenarios. Well, I would just bring Luigi with me, and then I'd be able, but then I'm making the level, so you can't go, and then they're just kind of going back and forth. And my favorite part was when my oldest said, "It's like what Dad was saying when he was talking about who would win in a fight versus Batman and Superman. The Mario from Mario Maker is like Superman, and the Mario Odyssey is more like Batman, and everybody knows Superman would win." So it felt great to be quoted, and such flawless logic, because obviously Superman could literally just blow, and Batman would be on a different planet on which he could not breathe, and he would be dead so quickly.
Charlie, did you
Not much of
see
a fight.
Batman v Superman?
Oh gosh. I did. I actually had to go to some PTSD classes afterwards because I was so traumatized by how horrible of a film it was.
You obviously
Oh my
didn't
gosh.
see the ultimate cut, Charlie.
Martha! Martha!
I will tell you that I showed my kids the ultimate cut here about a month ago or so.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to call CPS on you.
It
That is
It actually
Cool.
it actually was
Don't-
a bit
don't
better.
say it.
It was better than the theatrical.
wow. Okay. Well, bro,
I could hold on
I've
to
got
that.
some.
Give me that. Come on. It was better
No, man,
than the
I
theatrical.
I'm going to make you a delicious turd sandwich. Instead of just eating the turd, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake some focaccia bread, put a little garlic aioli on there, some lettuce. I'm going to put a real vine ripe tomato, some avocado, and then you can eat this delicious turd sandwich, and you can talk to me how much better it is. It's the regular turd, but you know what? You're still eating a turd, bro. It's still a turd.
But it's better than just a turd, Charlie.
I will, and I've said this phrase before, but never have I meant it more than in this moment. I will have to take your word for it. There is a 0% chance that I will be watching. So,
Oh. Well,
and
that
for those
makes
of
me
you who want to
laugh,
see
which brings us to our topic tonight of comedies.
oh my goodness.
Now,
All right.
Now,
We'll get back on
now
track.
as Charlie and I were thinking about topics to come up with, we came up with the topic of comedies. So we could do our top 10 comedies.
Could have done it.
We could have a kind of history of, comedies and how they've kind of
Oh, yeah.
evolved over time. And
Great idea.
We kind of decided that we wanted to kind of mesh a lot of these different formats that we've done together into just kind of a
Meshing.
conversation where we can talk about some of our favorite comedies, whether those
good.
comedies, do some of those hold up? Are some of the comedies that we watched as kids kind of best left in the past? And how are we seeing comedies pop up now? Are we seeing more comedies? Are we seeing the comedy genre just kind of get melded with other genres? So, there we go. So, Charlie,
Brody.
what are some of your favorite comedies? Just off the top of your head. Off the top of your head.
Well, bro, I tell you, I'm not going to give you a top 10 or anything like that.
No,
But
because that would have been a top
and-
10 comedies.
It would have been a top 10, right?
That's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing.
That's not what we're doing. But to answer that question, it really depends on which section of my life we're talking about.
Okay.
Because more so with this than in any of the other genres, my taste in comedies has evolved as my life has evolved. And I think like that's probably largely true for everyone. You know, there's things that you find funny as a kid, and then you get into your teenage years, and suddenly these teen comedies are more appealing because it represents the life stage you're at, and then you get to my age, and the last thing in the world I want to do besides, like, it's like Batman versus Superman, a new cut of that for any particular reason, and then a teen comedy, real close. Even the ones that I saw, like Breakfast Club and things, you know, John Hughes stuff, which is great. It's great. I just have no interest in it anymore. I'm sorry. I don't care who goes to the prom with who and who the dramatic ending to a love story for 17-year-olds that will end essentially with them breaking up almost guaranteed within the next 2 years. I don't care who gets laid or who scores the drugs. I just have no interest in fake IDs and who's throwing the party while their parents are out of town. So, but there was a time where that stuff was really like intriguing to me, and I did enjoy my fair share of those. So look, I just gave you a long non-answer.
You sure did. Welcome. You sure did.
So give me a time period.
Okay, how about
give me a time? I haven't done this in a while. Give me a time period.
There you go. Okay. The official talk punch hand gesture.
All right. Hey, we got T-shirts coming, by the way, soon.
So okay. So how about as a child? What were some of your favorite
all right, back on
comedies as a child? No, so we're talking like, okay, let's say maybe like in the 80s.
80s. What a great genre. So like is Back to the Future a comedy? Is Ghostbusters a comedy?
That's kind of the thing with comedies, right? Is that pretty much any movie is going to have humor. Unless it's, you know, just a drama that is just out to make you sad, and that's it. Pretty much any other movie is going to have some sort of humor, whether it's an action movie or an adventure movie. You know, Indiana Jones had humor. I wouldn't call it a comedy, though.
Right.
Back to the Future probably leaned more into the comedy. I would say it's a comedy adventure.
Sure.
So,
well, just to highlight a few. I mean, besides Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, like Bull Durham was end of the 80s. I absolutely loved Bull Durham from the moment that it came out, even though I was too young to get a lot of the discussions. We'll just, you know, some of the things that they were, the depths of what they were actually talking about. You know, a lot of the sex stuff was flying over my head, and the maturity of it. But there was baseball, and the baseball stuff was great, and anything baseball to me then was just absolutely intoxicating. So I just loved that movie, and continued to grow to be more fond of it as I got a little bit older. You know, things like Spinal Tap was like 1980. But I didn't see that until the 90s. Yeah. So I don't know if that counts, because it doesn't count, because even though it was an 80s film, I did not see that as a child. Big I liked a lot. Tom Hanks.
Oh, sure.
Airplane was really funny. I enjoyed Airplane quite a bit when I was a kid. Have you watched that like as an adult?
Yes.
What'd you think? How'd that hold up for you?
It's been a couple years. It's, you know, I think that Airplane is one of those ones that I think I have fonder memories of. And I think there was a time and a place for Airplane. It's not something that I think I would recommend to people that have never seen it before, who are maybe in their 30s or so. If they were like, oh man, I've never seen Airplane, I don't know if I could really recommend it. I don't know if the only reason held up that well.
The only reason to do it is just to show people that you used to be able to smoke on an airplane. I can't even fathom that in my mind, that people would light up a cigarette in a cabin and there'd be a non-smoking section somehow
with
on
like
this
a curtain.
I it's like absolutely absurd to me that was a real thing. But yeah, so I mean, you can show them what life. This was a different world here in 1980.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to show my wife The Naked Gun, which was a 1988 Leslie Nielsen vehicle.
Yeah.
And
I loved as a kid, but haven't watched it in a long time.
yeah, a lot of that really like slapsticky comedy stuff, like I don't know, it's fine. Like maybe those are best left in the era that we saw them when we were young.
Sure.
Because as much as she wasn't enjoying it, I was kind of like, I'm not sure I do. Now the baseball scene, that was great. When they're showing the bloopers and like the tiger eats the guy's head comes off, like that's good stuff. All just watch the baseball sequence and then that's all you need. Everything else you can kind of. There's some great moments. The safe sex when they're full body condoms. There's some great moments. All right, you talked me back into it.
And I think that something like that, along with Airplane, those were all the Zuckers, right? Was that them?
Yeah,
Zucker?
yeah, and they had some real clunkers. Oh boy.
They did, didn't they? Didn't they do like?
Look, at least to me, I don't know.
But yeah, so those were really funny as a kid. I haven't really re-explored them as a middle-aged man with kids. I would like to think that I could watch them and it would still be as funny. I just don't know if I could. If I would think it was funny. And is it best left in my memories? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Probably.
Yeah. So for me, for the 80s, you mentioned Ghostbusters. I think Ghostbusters is, and that kind of is that cross genre where we get a little bit of comedy with a little bit of horror, but that's one that I think it's one of the few comedies that I think does hold up, that I think you can watch now and people can explore now in the 2020s and still enjoy. When I was a kid, like some of the National Lampoon Vacation movies, I really liked.
Sure.
I watched the Christmas Vacation here, not this year, 2 years ago. It wasn't quite what it was when I was a kid.
No.
I know it made it onto my Christmas list of favorite Christmas movies, and part of that might just be nostalgia. But when I watched it, there was some moments where, because I was watching it with my kids especially, where I was kind of like, the pool scene where they laughed when she took off her bathing suit and said like, "Oh, that you're not supposed to do that." And I just, yeah, that's funny. You have to keep your bathing suit on when you go swimming. And then other parts they were just bored, and other parts they just didn't enjoy. Yeah. I don't know that that's going to be like a regular in my house. And then things like Caddyshack, kind of the.
Ooh, I do like Caddyshack. That was the 70s. But yeah.
Was that the 70s?
I think it was 78. Sure? No, I'm not.
So,
no, it was 1980. Okay. It was 1980. Okay. Excuse me.
Caddyshack, Coming to America,
Fletch was funny.
Fletch
was good. Yeah. I like that.
Three Amigos. Boy, I haven't seen
Three Amigos. I loved. Yeah.
I haven't seen Three Amigos in a long time. I don't know if Three Amigos would hold up. How would?
Can I tell?
Yeah, please do.
Can I tell a quick Three Amigos story?
Absolutely.
So I was talking to a couple of guys from my old band, Chris and Greg. We'll call them Chris and Greg to protect their identities.
Okay.
And I was telling the story of how when I was a kid, I walked into the theaters and Three Amigos was on, and I watched it. From like basically the middle on to the end, because it was like a double feature. The old school double feature where you pay for one and then stay for a duel. And there's a moment where there's this airplane that flies by, and one of the characters says it's a mail plane, and they're like, "How can you tell?" And then Martin Short, because of the little balls. And then he just starts laughing, and the other characters looking at him like he does. And I just remember thinking, I just don't know what that means. I don't understand the joke. I don't understand what's funny. And it wasn't until like, a couple years later, I was like, oh, I see what they did there. And then there's this pause on the phone, and my friend, let's call him Chris, is like, I just got that joke just now. He's like, I was this years old when I so this mystery has lingered in his mind since his childhood, and I was just telling the story about how it lasted in mind for a couple of years until I was like 6 or 7, and then understood or whatever, and then he's like, oh, ding ding. So yeah, anyway, that's my Three Amigos story. Have you watched Big with your kids?
Big? No.
Yeah, with Tom Hanks?
No.
So for those of you who have not seen Big, it's the story of a child who goes to this like machine. Is it Zoltan? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's like a carnival fortune teller.
And he wishes to be big, and all of a sudden he's an adult in this adult world doing all these adult things, including at some point sleeping with a woman, which was super like weird, and just didn't feel weird to me as a kid. But as an adult watching that with my kids, when like he started at the age of my 10-year-old, who all of a sudden was transformed into an adult and then was like sleeping with a girl, be like, I don't know. It was like a really weird part of the plot line. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway.
Or when he first becomes big and wakes up in the house and is in underwear, and then runs through the house in underwear. Can you imagine the poor mom?
Yeah, terrifying.
It's
right?
just a man that you don't know in his underwear running from upstairs. Oh my gosh. Like, there's just... You just can't think too deeply on these movies, I guess, is the moral of the story. I guess we'll talk more about that later, but yeah, it was Yeah. So the 80s, I think, had some good movies. Some movies.
Yeah, some great movies.
Sure. Yes.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Come on. Anything Steve Martin was in was just like...
Have you watched The Jerk?
I have.
Like lately?
No, I have not.
Oh.
I'm not sure how well it's held up.
It doesn't.
But when I was like 7, it was funny.
Yeah. That's one that could probably stay where we left it.
Sure.
Which I think is a valid question with most comedies. Are they kind of best left in the era that they came out? I don't know.
Yeah. Something like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles would be a tough one to show the kids, because they'd just be confused the whole time why they didn't just pull out their cell phones or iPads and just like why didn't they just book a hotel room on the computer, Dad? What are they doing? Like why is it so difficult for them to get from one location to the other location? We call an Uber. What are they doing, Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no, payphones and stuff. This is a real thing. We used to have to like pull off the road to call somebody sometimes. This was a real problem.
Sure.
I remember there were times where I didn't have 20 cents to make a phone call, and I had to ask strangers for dimes just so I could make a phone call. Like, hey, like, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I'm trying to call someone. I don't have any change, please. And
someone paged me with a 911, and I don't know who it is. Can I please have a dime?
Please, sir. May I bum a dime off you to make this phone call?
Oh, back when people carried change.
Gosh, it was so much easier to like create conflict of like just plot devices back in the day of like whether it's horror movies or travel movies, of like the complexities of just doing everyday tasks. It's like the infomercials they try to do now. Like, has this ever happened to you? And a guy's carrying like 3 buckets of water to wash his car, and he's like, oh no, water's flying everywhere. Like he couldn't just carry 1 bucket. But no, day-to-day tasks are impossible. Anyway.
Oh. Okay, so how about
so the 90s?
So how about like teenage time, 90s? You and I were hanging out in the 90s.
We were.
So we saw a fair amount of comedies together.
So
What
for me,
were
the
some of the
90s
highlights for you in the
rom-coms.
90s?
So like When Harry Met Sally was an 80s movie. It was my all-time favorite, but I didn't see it until the 90s
Okay.
and fell in love with the rom-com genre in general. Uh, and anything that Billy Crystal was in was just, if you've watched, there's actually a drinking game that's been invented to go along with this podcast. Every time I say Billy Crystal, you gotta hit a shot. So, people out there getting a little wasted right now because Billy. But I loved the rom coms of the '90s. Jerry Maguire, some of the there was a lot of them. There always are, but I was more engaged into that idea of people falling in love. But for me, like Clerks was like the game changer for me. I was in high school, I was a theater kid, and just this movie that was just people talking, and they were having the conversations that I was having with my friends that I thought were really funny and really entertaining, but I just didn't think anybody else. Yeah, like these are like it was like he was watching me and my buddies and just like writing down stuff, and then all of a sudden there it is in this movie, and it's like, whoa, and people like it and people think it's funny, and that really kind of like, I wrote things back in my younger days, little screenplays and little fun things, and that was like just people's lives, and then just having like witty dialogue and banter and conversations about interesting things. I just thought that was really fascinating to me then. Look, does it hold up like in terms of it's been done better since Clerks, but that movie just has like I did show that to Amy, and she did like that one. Okay. And there's anytime the number 37 gets brought up, we look at each other like 37, just without fail, whatever the context is. So it's just like this little moment that we share from 37. So if it's a fun movie. I like that one. What about you? What was the heart of your 90s?
I think I was going to bring up Kevin Smith as well. I think it's interesting. I think I watched that the first time with you. I think we probably went through a whole bunch of Kevin Smith. It was probably like Clerks and Mallrats, and Clerks is an interesting one because it was very of the time,
Sure, yeah.
Could what were they, like 20, 21, 22? So they were like a year or two out of high school, all those characters. And so could a 20-year-old pick up Clerks now and still be able to relate with some of the stuff? I don't know. Maybe the conversations, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
I think there is something to say for movies that don't involve, like that was black and white, the whole thing, right? And so like it doesn't rely heavily on technology to tell the story. And I do think that those type of movies have a better shot of holding up, something where you're not watching like The Net or something, where I can't, whatever, the movie wasn't good, but even if it was great, it would just be really hard to just watch. I'm going to hack into this, Apple IIe, and this big glowing green screen, and, just the dial-up sounds, like, just really, it pulls you out of the moment.
Sure.
And there were, and the conflicts that can be easily resolved by internet searches or cell phone calls, things like that. It's a little bit harder to watch, I think, movies now where you're like, oh God, that'd be so simple to just solve this conflict with like a quick phone call. But I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that 20-year-olds now would love it, but I'm saying that the barrier will just be that it's not very well acted. Probably we can, like, I loved the movie, but even the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, they're not great actors, but I'm digging the dialogue, so there's barriers like that. I mean,
19-year-old Jason Mewes, like,
I mean, even like the side characters that feel like people that they just literally found on the street and were like, hey, we're filming something in here real quick. Can you come in here and just look through some eggs? It's some rando off the streets like, sure, I'll do it. Probably the production value and some of the like the cast and stuff maybe isn't quite as great, but I don't know. I'd be curious. That was like, I've shown my wife a lot of comedies from a lot of different decades, and that's one that she liked.
Okay.
So I'm putting that on the maybe it could still hold up list.
Okay. Now another one that I enjoyed in the 90s was Austin Powers.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I saw all the Austin Powers. Now I think the third one came out in the 2000s. I'm positive it did.
Yeah.
Because I know Austin Powers 2 came out in 1999. So, but I saw them all in theaters, and they were really funny. They were really funny in the 90s. The last time I saw them, I watched them as a little marathon on like New Year's Day 2011. I think it was like New Year's Eve 2011, New Year's Day 2012, something like that.
Yeah.
And they were fine, I think. I think that the first one, when I was a kid, the first one was the funniest movie I'd ever seen.
Sure.
When I was like 13, 14, something like that. Just the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And I think I do still enjoy the third one. It's pretty quotable. But yeah, that's not one.
I think the third one might be the best of the
I think
three,
it is.
but...
I think it is. But that's also not one that I'm like rushing to show my kids anytime soon.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a lot of part. Like, I didn't get into the Ace Ventura, like the early '90s Adam Sandler. Like there were kids, that I went to high school with that are like walking around and bending over and spreading their butt cheeks and like talking with their butts, and I just, and it's not like, oh, I'm too good for this kind of humor, but it was just like they were so irritating. The kids that I knew that liked that stuff were so obnoxious that there was I just can't with Jim Carrey. I just can't with Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
1998, Wedding Singer comes out. Okay, you get me in the door with baseball, you get me in the door with music. So
sure.
A guy playing guitar and singing at weddings, I'm like, go on, you have my interest. and actually that was a pretty enjoyable film, and I did like that one.
There was a lot of Adam Sandler in the 90s.
A lot of Adam Sandler. We'll talk more about this later, but I just, studios find a successful formula and they're kind of like, all right, people seem to like this Adam guy from SNL. Let's make as many of these movies as we can.
Sure.
And you end up with gems like Airheads, and which was probably my second favorite Adam Sandler movie.
Don't know if I'd call that an Adam Sandler movie though.
Well, he's in it. Is he not in it?
Yeah, he's in it. I don't know.
You want to call it a Steve Buscemi?
I think of like the Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison, Waterboy, like him as the lead.
I know, but I just wanted to throw that one out because that was another '90s movie that wasn't bad.
Biodome, not Adam Sandler, but
God.
just
no, Pauly Shore. That ended like, I can't believe they made an army movie with Pauly Shore. I haven't had the strength yet to talk to my kids about Pauly Shore.
He just came out with a new movie
that parents need to have with their children. Did he really?
Did you see he just came out with a new movie?
Don't make stuff up on the podcast.
Oh my goodness. I was shocked. It popped up somehow in my feed of new Pauly Shore movie, where he's like a guy that's living in a boathouse or like a pool house, and some new people buy the house, but he comes with the house, and so hijinks ensue.
Is it called Guest House? Maybe. Or is it How It Ends? Let's check out Guest House.
I think it might be Guest House. But yeah.
Okay, right now currently rated a 4.4 on IMDb. A newly engaged couple buys their dream house, but it comes with one small catch: a perennial party animal who lives in the guest house. Encino Man was a funny movie with Pauly Shore. I did like that as a kid.
Good.
It made me wear sweater vests. I think we've talked about that before. But Brandon Fraser looked good in them, so I thought, why not me?
Sure.
Oh, I don't look like Brandon Fraser, but hey, it's all right.
Okay.
Have you seen Brandon Fraser now? I got you now, bud. I like Groundhog Day '93.
Yep,
anything Bill
Day
Murray
was
in the '90s was
that was good.
Can I say I also have never cared for like movies like What About Bob, where like there's an obvious like interloper that I'm supposed to empathize with, but like all I can do is feel bad. It's like Tom and Jerry, like where I'm supposed to like the mouse, but like all the mouse does is invade the house and like cause problems, and the cat's trying to get the mouse out, which seems like maybe the cat's job. And all the mouse does is completely destroy and eviscerate the cat. I feel bad for Richard Dreyfuss.
Sure.
Bob is a terrible human being. Like, what's Bob doing? I hated that movie. Hated it. It's the only Bill Murray movie that I think I've ever just outright hated. diversion there.
I think we also saw like the American Pie stuff. Now I wasn't really into the American Pie stuff, but I know that was a big movie. Like the American Pie, Something About Mary. You kind of got like the raunchier comedies that were coming out.
Ben Stiller comedies were
Yeah.
yeah, he had his like little run of films. There's some underrated Ben Stiller gems, by the way, that we could. I don't want to turn this into a my favorite movie podcast. So, if you're looking for some Ben Stiller recs, come message me. I got you covered.
So teenage years, 90s. Yeah, there were some good ones. I honestly, like, I can't think of, like, at the time it was probably like Austin Powers was probably some of my favorite, but yeah, something that would hold up that I could watch now. Yeah, maybe like a Groundhog Day. Something like that.
I think that holds up pretty well. Yeah, Mystery Men '99. I just wanted to make sure it made the cut.
Yeah, boy, I haven't seen Mystery Men in 20
Zero
years.
Effect. Oh, Zero Effect was good.
Okay, so then we get into like adulthood. So the 2000s. What were some highlights for you in the 2000s?
Oh man, so the 2000s were interesting, right? Just like life stage wise, because that covers like a pretty big change, like the end of college into like marriage and things like that. A lot of good Pixar films, in the 2000s.
Comedies? Could those be considered comedies?
What would you call the Pixar? Like, how would you categorize them? Like a Toy Story, which, it's like a comedy, an animated comedy, right?
I think of them as like family movies.
What can't family? I mean, like we're talking rom-coms. I mean, like movie genres to me is a little bit like musical genres.
Okay.
Like I can say, what's your favorite style of music, and you can tell me I like rock and roll. And like that doesn't really mean anything anymore. Like what do you like? What does that mean? What kind of, like, you need to be more specific. Like
hard
what kind
rock,
of
soft
music
rock, electro rock.
Yeah, what are we talking? Like Buddy Holly? Like we talking like 1950s, like Johnny B. Good style? We talking Chuck Berry? Or are we talking like 80s? Yeah, give me glam rock. Give me, what are we talking? Indie rock, alt rock? What it? I don't know. What does Taylor Swift write?
Pop.
What do you call it? But it's not just pop, right? She's got influences from all sorts of genres of music that kind of like fuse together. It's a cop-out just to say it's pop. It doesn't really describe it. How can you call that pop and then call like Mariah Carey's 1990s work pop, and then call what Madonna does pop, and then is Beyonce sing pop? It's not all the same stuff. It's all very different. It's coming from different places, different people writing it, different influences. And you can't just broad stroke things anymore.
I'm not super familiar with Taylor Swift.
Well, it's just an example.
Okay.
She's fantastic, and and there's a lot of really great artists out there, but most of the great artists, you can't pigeonhole them into like one style of music because they draw influences from a lot of different styles. And movies are that way. Like, it's hard to find a comedy that's just straight comedy, that has no action, and it's got no drama, it's got no romance, and it's got no family elements into it. So look, if we're cutting out, if you want to say animated films don't count, that's fine. That's fine. You tell me some of your favorite 2000s.
So 2000s, I think some of like the Edgar Wright stuff. So we got like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz.
Yes.
Like in that 2000 to 2010 era.
Love that.
Those, I really enjoyed those. There was kind of the rapid rise of like the Napoleon Dynamite, which really took off, and I saw it once in theaters and was like, I don't get it. But then I kept thinking about it, and then I went to see it again, and then it was really funny the second time. So
really, okay,
yeah.
That is like almost exactly the opposite experience of most people with Napoleon Dynamite.
Really?
Or like I think they liked it the first time, and then maybe upon further viewings were kind of like,
Oh no! The first time I saw it, I didn't get it, and then like it took me like a week, and I just thought about it, and I thought about all the parts, and I was like, that was funny, and oh yeah, that was funny.
I think there's different kinds of comedies, and like just within. I know. I was just talking about music genres and things like that, but even like if you forget the broad like action comedy drama, forget all those terms.
Sure.
But just there's the way that the humor is delivered, whether it's satire or like through like setups, like surprise setups. Movies like The Hangover or Anchorman, 40 Virgin are all very funny in their own different ways and have their own like kind of way of delivering the comedy to you. In a movie like Napoleon Dynamite, the character himself, either you thought he was funny or you thought he was obnoxious, and basically like whatever side of the spectrum you fell on that, that's what, I liked the movie, I thought he was funny, or wow, that kid is like super annoying, that movie sucked. And there is like a needle that can move on when it's like a character based, like whether it's like Jim Carrey or Adam Sandler doing like these wacky slapstick. There's a needle where like at some point you've just seen too much Jim Carrey, and it's like, okay, all right, Ace Ventura and Liar Liar, and the guy's just made of rubber, and I don't want to watch The Mask anymore, and now I don't like it, and it has nothing to do with the movie itself, just the delivery. And then there's other ones like where it's the surprise of the comedy. I remember watching like a show when I was a kid, where like they brought in comedians and it was like a game show, and they're just basically trying to make the contestants laugh. Like they laugh, they lose money. And this guy gets up there, and the first joke he says, well, I just got crack in my town. It's about time. And there was just something about the delivery, and I just thought that was so funny. Like, and I just laughed. I was like, I don't know, I was like a kid. I don't even know what crack was, but it just made me laugh. I was like, oh, that's so funny. It's delivery, and the contestant laughed, and then great. That joke's good once. And it's not even good. Let's just be clear. But the delivery was great. But there will never be a second delivery of that joke that makes me laugh. It's like that first moment. I wasn't expecting the punchline. The punchline came. The punchline got me, and I laughed as a kid. And it's like, oh, it's funny. But there's never another moment where that joke's gonna land. And there are movies like that where you watch them once, and there's like a surprise punchline or a thing that happens, and you laugh, and it's hysterical. And then you try to watch it again, and it's like, oh, I know that's coming, or I know this guy's stick. And so I think Napoleon Dynamite can have that kind of reviewing fatigue.
Sure.
When you kind of know the jokes are coming, you kind of know anyway.
And yeah, I think that came out around 2004, and I think I saw it a couple times over the next few years, but it's been well over 10 years since I've seen that movie.
What did you think of like the Will Ferrell? Did you get into like Step Brothers and all that stuff?
I enjoyed the Will Ferrell stuff. I enjoyed Anchorman. I enjoyed the little part he had in Wedding Crashers.
Did you watch Old School? You're my boy, Blue.
I liked Old School. Yeah. He did kind of get to that point though, where then he was putting out, it was just another Will Ferrell movie. There was one where he was like a soccer coach, and I remember I saw like the poster, and I was like, I don't care, and so kind of like what you were talking about with the Jim Carrey, like, okay, like, oh, that was kind of funny, and yeah, that was funny, and then it was like, oh, okay, now I'm tired of this, and kind of like what you mentioned earlier, where the movie studios are like, oh, this is really hot right now. Let's do as much of it as we can. And yes, we're going to burn it out, but we're going to make as much money as we can. And I think Will Ferrell was
ride the wave all last.
Yeah, Will Ferrell was very much that. And I think, you kind of see that where Anchorman was a huge hit when it came out. And then Anchorman 2 came out like 10 years later. Maybe more.
Way too late.
Maybe more than that, and I don't think it did very well in the box office.
Yeah, the 2000s also had a lot of like the Judd Apatow stuff, like Knocked Up and things like that. Pineapple Express. Like the Seth Rogen. Actually, I don't know if Judd Apatow did Pineapple Express, but the Seth Rogen-y comedies and stuff like that. Did you like Superbad? Did you get into that at all?
I didn't really get into Superbad. I remember watching it and thinking it was fine. Did you get into that?
I think it was too old.
I might have been on the verge.
I don't like teens. Yeah, you know me.
Yeah,
I was a curmudgeon from a very early age. I didn't like most I liked teen movies when I was preteen, and then as soon as I should have liked the American Pies when I was in high school, and I just did. I'm like, that's not my high school experience. Like, so it's like pre-high school. Watching high school movies was like really interesting because I'm like, oh, that's what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I was in high school, it's like, okay, my experience is nothing like these movies. Like, they are just aren't these pockets of cool kids walking around and like, nerds, and it's just kind of like more of a melting pot, and everyone's for the most part pretty chill with each other, and it's like, okay, well, this is just, I guess that wouldn't make a very interesting movie. I was like, oh man, I saw this kid, he was smart, and I said hello, and then there was this other kid who played football, and I was like, what's up? And then we were like in a play together, and it was like, okay, cool, and then like we did homework, and
yeah.
I don't know. I didn't live it up enough in high school. But.
Now, when I did like, I did like 40-Year-Old Virgin, and so
here are 5 movies matching Borat.
It's not a podcast if Siri doesn't chime in. Yeah, thank you, right. Siri. 5 movies that match Borat. She says Borat, subsequent movie film.
Okay.
So Carmen meets Borat, the best of Borat, and Borat's television program. Wow, Siri, that is very specific.
I did not know all those existed.
Also on the list, Borat. So there you go.
See, I never saw Borat. I see. That's one thing that I never got into was the Sacha Baron Cohen stuff. Just not much interest of like going around and tricking people, making them look stupid.
There's the 2000s were a lot. I mean, we could really spend the rest of the podcast just walking through 2000s comedies, because I did see this is probably the decade that I've seen the most. Like, this was where we're getting free movies with our buddy who worked at the movie theater, yeah. And then stretching into like my DVD obsession, and mixed in with cable, and then Netflix discs back in the day getting sent to the home. So it's like, okay, I'll take a chance in some of these. Watching something like Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and that was it's funny, it was interesting. But most like Super Troopers and
I
things
really
that
like Super Troopers.
That I liked at the time, but it's been almost 20 years since Super Troopers. I tried to watch that again. It just
didn't hold up.
Some magic is definitely gone. Didn't hold for me. It didn't like. I don't know. I tried. Office Space, I loved. We didn't talk about Office Space. I showed that to Amy, who used to work in an office.
I have that on the list. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we got to watch this one, and it just I think she liked it fine, but okay. It just, I don't know. It was, I've struggled to find like one of those comedies that was great for me when I was younger that still really resonates today with the wife. She fell asleep in Austin Powers. Did I mention that? She did not like the Austin Powers. It's like, oh, we're gonna watch these. As soon as like the fat bastards like, yeah. The fart and the poops and stuff. She's like, all right, I'm tuning out. Which I get.
So yeah, so 2000s. We also got. I in preparation for this episode, I kind of went through IMDb and just kind of looked at some of the top comedies of each decade. One that popped up for the 2000s was Tropic Thunder, which
it's an interesting one. Yeah, I was going to mention that. At the end.
I haven't seen that since it came out. I don't know if that would be one that you could really. I don't know.
It's when we kind of wrap back around to talking about like how things hold up and stuff. That one presents a very interesting discussion. We can, I guess, maybe we'll lump that in. But yeah, like the topic of blackface has become kind of a big issue now, especially I think during quarantine, people had a lot of time to like binge watch shows, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's an episode of The Office that they do blackface in. Like there's episodes of Scrubs that have blackface. Like wait, what? Like there's Community had one of their Dungeons and Dragons episode blackface. What? Like that was like not that long ago. Like what are we talking about? He was like, that was like less than 10 years ago. We're doing blackface still on TV and thinking that's funny. Like what? So it is kind of interesting discussion. Because I know in the movie it's presented like Robert Downey Jr. is an actor who lives off of pushing boundaries, and maybe this one is pushed too far and he's gone too far. But is the satire and the theme lost, and just people kind of either now is it funny or not funny. It's interesting conversation we could have.
It
or
is.
not.
It is. I remember watching it and kind of laughing at the initial idea of it, but then kind of moving into like, I don't know if I should be laughing at this.
Am I allowed to laugh at this?
Am I allowed to laugh at this?
Let me tell you, Tom Cruise in that movie, very
It's
funny.
great. It's great. Yeah.
I also have not seen. I have no idea. I haven't seen that movie since like maybe 2009, so I have no idea how I would feel about it now.
Yeah, I saw it right when it came out, and I haven't seen it since. So, I don't know.
And probably like a lot of these comedies probably fit into that. I rewatch when I rewatch, like it's either like movies that I'm showing someone that's never seen it, or it's like something that like I'm running into again, like just for a comfort. But like I don't rewatch. I try to rewatch City Slickers with my wife, Billy Crystal.
Sure.
And there's some real cringy moments in that one, like some real like. Still, I think the movie itself is still fine. It's still funny. It's entertaining enough, and it's not like you need to like toss it in the can. But there's certainly some like some like just thematic stuff, and it's it's a little. Anyway,
there you go. The 2010s also have one of my favorite. That when I think about comedies, it's one of the first ones that comes to mind. I don't know why. I haven't seen it in a number of years. I feel like I should watch it again because in my mind I really like it. And it's Big Trouble, that came out in like 2001, 2002. It was supposed to come out like the week that 9/11 happened, and it involves sneaking bombs onto planes, and so they pushed it back, pushed it out some. But that movie, it's really funny. I need to watch it again, but in my mind, it's a really funny movie.
That movie has the moment that I still think of every time I go to an airport, where these like Johnny Knoxville and like Tom Sizemore, I think, are driving to the airport, and they're like, "Well, arriving at the airport, but we want to depart on a plane.
We're departing."
What are we? So looking at it, and I think just without fail, I guess I don't have to drive to the airport much anymore these days, which is nice. But every time I drive to the airport, I would make that joke to whoever was sitting next to me. I'm like, "Wait, we're arriving, but we want to depart. What do we do?" And they're like, and no one had ever seen the movie, so everyone just like. Would always just look at me like, "What are you, an idiot?" Like, come on, Big Trouble. Come on, it's funny.
So
that movie was funny, by the way. It was
funny.
Underrated.
Okay, so now we're getting into our more middle-aged time. We got like the 2010s and into our like 30s. So this is interesting. As I went through IMDb looking for kind of the top comedies, not many just straight up comedies. There's a lot of movies that are action comedies. So you're getting, Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man and Jumanji and things like that. But not so much just like comedies. So do you have any, what are your thoughts on that, on kind of comedies and where they, are we just kind of getting comedy moved into other things? Is this kind of the Marvel effect on movies and comedies, is just big movies that have enough comedy in it that it then gets that kind of sub thing in IMDb?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors. I think the Marvel factor, like this big budget blockbuster superhero, I think that is a factor. I think that it's probably a lot harder to write a straight comedy or even like a rom-com and then take that to a studio and be like, all right, I need $100 million to make this. Let's go. When they can spend, add another $100 million to that, make a Marvel movie or a Star Wars movie or a DC movie, and then print their money after it. I think you're seeing less family comedies because of the rise of just Disney and Pixar and like the animated films, and then you get like lower budget family stuff, so like Princess Bridey, stuff like that. I don't think you see as much anymore. I think streaming services play into that a lot, because now there's like another avenue for like indie films to like be released for a viewing audience. And I think it's harder probably for just the average person to find out. Like if you just ever take time to scroll the comedy section on like Netflix or Hulu or Prime, you're gonna find just oodles of movies that you've never heard of. And you can even, try to cross-reference like IMDb scores or Rotten Tomato scores or Metacritic scores or however you like to review your movies. And you'll probably find some that are really highly rated and probably some gems. And maybe you're the kind of person who will just click on a movie sight unseen. Oh, I haven't heard of any of these actors. Plot looks interesting, and I'll click it. Or maybe you need a little bit more than that. I used to pre-kids. I would actively seek through and try to find like little indie gems of like comedies, dramas, action, but just things that I've never heard of this. This looks really interesting, and I would put them on my list, and I would actively build my queue. And now my queue is like dormant. It's just like a barren wasteland. Sure. It's like, so if I've never heard of it, I'm probably not going to watch it, because it's just like time is more limited.
Yeah.
Like this was the hardest decade for me to come up with like comedies that I saw and liked. You got some sequels. You got a lot of like genre blurring, and you got movies I'm sure really funny. Like I'm sure like I want to see Jojo Rabbit. I have not seen Jojo Rabbit. Yeah. There are things that looked funny to me that I just never got around to watching. This is the decade that I went to the movie theater the least of all the decades of my life. I guess like we're not off to a great start in the 20s. So, but yeah, it's I don't know. The Pixar stuff is probably like if we're counting superhero, like the Deadpool stuff. It's funny, I guess. That's comedy-ish, right? Comedy adjacent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you come up with something you liked? So IMDb. Okay, I'm just going to kind of rattle off, kind of what they have. Now, I just checked the comedy box and went from 2010 to 2019. So the number one comedy in IMDb is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino,
but that wasn't funny, right?
It's a Quentin Tarantino like docudrama.
Interesting.
I guess it has enough comedy that it got the comedy tag. What's up?
I liked Bridesmaids a lot back when that first came out. That was like 2011.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was pretty funny.
Crazy Stupid Love, with Steve Carell and Ryan Gosling and Julianne Moore and Emma Stone. Parasite, which is like a thriller. Is that a funny? I didn't see it.
I don't think that. I know, like you and I were talking pre-show about how a lot of people would put American Psycho as a comedy. Yeah. I think there's a whole world of like this cross genre pollination, and comedy is not the first thing that comes to mind for most of these.
Yeah, Thor Ragnarok. Okay, Thor Ragnarok, very funny movie. Very funny movie. On my first thought is, action adventure. It's an action adventure movie.
Sure.
But that's kind of the big one that I've seen. That's the first one that I've seen. I haven't seen the other three, but that one is, from what I've seen, the top comedy of the 2010s. Very funny movie. If people were asking for comedies, I don't know if that would be like, you should watch Thor Ragnarok. I don't know. Maybe people do. Maybe when people are talking about comedies, that's what comes up. But it was very interesting to look through the list and to see things that I wouldn't necessarily categorize as a comedy that are like taking up the entire list of comedies.
Yeah. And I don't know, and maybe this is a good time to start transitioning the conversation, but I don't know if I don't have strong feelings as to whether or not that's good or bad. I like my movies to be more than one thing. So I don't mind having something like I think Marvel's at its best when it's being funny, sure, and then transitions into being dramatic, and then transitions into action, and you get like basically everything. It's like having a meal instead of having just like eating one thing. You get like a full 3-course or 7-course meal. You get all the feelings. You walk out, you've had maybe a tear in your eye, you've chuckled with your belly, and you've been on the edge of your seat. Like that's a good night. That's a good night at the movies.
Sure.
I don't know that like it's that it's necessarily a bad thing. I do think that we're in a transitional period too in terms of like our societal evolution. I think that we've kind of reached some new touchstones of like understanding the need for representation and just getting different voices involved in the creative process. And I think that probably we've seen a lot of movies where people got away with just putting faces on a screen or writing a character into something and just calling that a representation of the people group versus like actually having people of color, women, LGBTQ community involved in like the actual creative process. And so I think that you get a lot of like maybe some disingenuine characters. Like how long was the joke about the black guy who would die in a horror movie? Like first, like that's been around. I remember that as a kid.
Yeah.
Like they're almost like red shirts in Star Trek. Like that's like horrible that's like, or like in a comedy, like a sassy black friend or something like that, or a sassy gay friend or something, just to kind of like put a little bit of representation, but never as like the lead character and never written from the voice that the character possesses. And I really think, we're seeing that change for the better. But I do think there's like in the 2010s, you're seeing studios kind of being aware of like some of these shifting attitudes with like the Me Too movement and more recently the Black Lives Matter movement, and trying to like make money off of that without actually doing like the systemic work to build the framework to produce the right kind of voices. And so I do think you get really movies that don't really satisfy anyone.
Sure.
I do think that was also a problem of like the later 2010s. And then people will, blame the idea of representation on some of those like failures. And that's not really what's happening, at least in my opinion. And maybe my opinion shouldn't matter that much about this anyway, but just, I think that I'm excited. I think the next 10 years, we're going to get better stories told from a much wider, diverse subset of people. This is going to be more interesting. I think with the rise of different streaming services, we're going to have more opportunities to see those films in the comfort of our own home. And hopefully we'll be able to discover some new material, or like with smaller budgeted indie stuff. I'm hoping that there'll be a way for that to go. I do think also, and we haven't talked about it much in this podcast, but you've heard me rant about it before, the TV plays a big role in this. That I think a lot of, when you're wanting to tell a comedy story, it used to be, it had to be told in a movie format. And now you're seeing a lot of great writers go to TV and a lot of great actors go to TV. And we have a lot of really funny, laugh out loud television right now. And so, you can't really get and then you used to think, we can't get the Marvel stuff on TV. And then WandaVision comes out and we got The Mandalorian. And so I think you're starting to see that television really take over some of that storytelling room that used to be monopolized by movies as well. But yeah. I've been talking for too long. You talk, Brod.
Well, and I think that having, like you mentioned, having more choices with the streaming services, I think is a really good point. People, I think, are more willing to give things a shot that are just showing up on these straight to Netflix, straight to Disney Plus. I remember back in the 2000s, if something came out straight to DVD, you don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It means that it's not.
Aladdin too.
Yeah, like how many comedies went straight to DVD that then just have like a horrible cover and it's what's up.
Do you remember you used to work at Blockbuster and
did.
You came home one day with like boxes of like just straight to DVD films, like just these, like you had like boxes and boxes. I don't know if they were DVDs or maybe they were VHSs.
They were VHSs because we were transitioning out of VHSs into DVDs. And so I just was able to load up. I think I got them for 10 cents or something like that. And so you spend $20 and get a box full of stuff. But yeah.
I gotta look it up. I watched. I think I only watched one of them. It was like a random one with Ernie Hudson.
Oh jeez. Yeah.
And I don't remember what the movie was, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I worked at Blockbuster during the VHS. I used to have to put the VHSs inside the rewinders when people didn't rewind, and it used to annoy me.
Oh,
But yeah, so having the opportunities to put things straight to Netflix. I mean, honestly, like stuff that goes straight to Netflix, you get a Netflix original, and it almost does carry some kind of clout with it. It's like, oh, it's like a Netflix original. I'll give that a shot because Netflix put it out. Where 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. If it's not in theaters, I'm not interested. I'm not going to watch a straight to DVD movie, and streaming wasn't a thing back then. But, or like a made for TV movie. I don't care. Don't advertise a straight to TV movie to me because I'm not going to watch it. And so I think that, especially when you have these smaller budgets, and granted, Netflix is still putting out, $100+ million movies.
sure.
But Netflix can put out a smaller, lower budget comedy, and that can work for them. And they can put it out, and it can get views, and it can become trending. All of a sudden I've got movies on this top 10 trending that I've never heard of before, and that's neat, and that's exciting for the people that are making that stuff. So yeah, so I am very interested to see where comedies go. We are seeing comedies get mixed in with a lot of stuff. I enjoy Marvel when they do comedy stuff. When you have the Ant-Man, when you have the Guardians, all that stuff. And I'm sure we'll get back to a point, because trends come and go, where we get straight slapstick, Ace Ventura type movies, again one day. But for right now, I'm really curious to see where we go and what we do in the 2020s with the comedy genre. So
I watched Palm Springs, which was a Hulu film. I thought it was pretty enjoyable. So that was a nice little. I call it a date night, but really that's just what we call watching a movie together after the kids have gone to sleep.
There you go.
But Andy Samberg and Christina Milioti, it was cute. J.K. Simmons, who's always a scene stealer.
And I heard good things about that. I remember seeing a trailer.
Yeah. So. If you guys have Hulu, you should give it a chance. Watch it.
I don't.
It's a little hey, anything that follows the Groundhog Day formula, it's got to weigh into my heart. But,
it's true.
But yeah, I think this movie pulls it out pretty well. I think it's a cute little film. And yeah, I like to see. I'd like to see more of that. I don't know. I'm excited for more stories to be told and for there to be more avenues for independent filmmakers to really get their voices heard, and to hopefully streaming can really be a part of that. We'll see.
Cool. You have any closing thoughts, Charlie?
I'll wrap it up. Okay. You know what? I would say, if you can, let us know in the comments some of your favorite comedies and what's held up for you, what hasn't held up for you. There's a bigger conversation to be had here than we're going to have tonight. That maybe for another time on here. Certainly, it's been discussed on other places that you can find as to comedies and how they what do you do with content that maybe is a little offensive. You get the warning labels and some of the Disney Plus stuff. I shouldn't say maybe a little offensive. Some of it's just horrifically offensive, and just downright racist or misogynistic or just really insensitive material. So I don't mean to diminish or downplay that. Some of it's just depending on the movie is just oh my gosh, and some of it is oh okay, yeah, I can see why people wouldn't like that anymore. So you kind of have a full spectrum of regrettable decisions that have been made by television and by film. There's a broader conversation to be had there, but I would encourage you guys to just enjoy the movies that you enjoy and share them with the people that you love. But I will say that I feel like comedies is kind of like the champagne of movies. When it comes out, you pop that top, you enjoy it, and you consume it, and don't save it. Because it is hard to go back 10 years later and introduce people to comedies. It's a little bit trickier. I think they are best viewed in the time that they are made and enjoyed then. And then the ones that really are meaningful to you, you'll carry further into the future. But it's hard to get the kids or the or your spouse excited about things that they haven't seen from like 20 years ago. It's just hard.
I agree.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm also supposed to say contractually that if you enjoyed this video, down below there'll be some suggestions of other videos of ours that you should absolutely click on. You don't even have to watch them. Just clicking on them helps us out. You don't have to even like our videos. You can just like and subscribe and then just tune out. Leave the video on in the background and go cook your family, some food. Go watch a different podcast on a different thing. It helps us out. We appreciate it, and we enjoy sharing this time with you. And Brody, can I just say your beard looks extra fantastic tonight?
Oh, thank you. It's getting very gray.
I love it. Old gray beard himself.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts from you, B?
No, I think I'm good. I think that you kind of hit it. There's movies that I think hold up well, and there's movies that don't. So when the comedies come out,
Eloquently said.
Watch them, enjoy them, love them, because you don't know what might happen in 20 years.
You never know when you're going to get a little older and realize that the movie Big was super creepy.
So
just enjoy them while you can.
Super creepy. All right. We'll talk to you guys
All
later.
right. See you next time.
Bye.
Adios.